Ivan Mactaggart is a systems engineer with extensive experience leading to digital and engineering improvement programs. Ivan joined East West Rail in January 2021, having previously spent most of his career in defense, including the Atomic Weapons Establishment, Defense Science and Technology Laboratory, and the MBDA missile system. Ivan's a chartered engineer and a fellow of the IET. And Joao Rocha, just behind the screen, joined East West Rail in January 2022 as the head of asset management and maintenance to help deliver the company's vision and objectives. He started his career in academia and has a PhD in civil engineering. Previously, Joao also worked for Network Rail, where he began by managing structures asset in southern region and then went to lead asset management team in high speed. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Mona. Hopefully you all can hear me. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joao. Along with Ivan, we're going to be talking to you about the work we're doing in East West Rail, delivering a digital spine. So beginning with the company, what is East West Rail? So we've been established by the UK government as a public arm's length body back at the end of 2017. And we're also a special purpose delivery vehicle, which means our focus is solely on the delivery of the project, making sure that we deliver it on time, on schedule, and on budget, achieving all the outcomes that we're setting out to achieve. Obviously, because we are going to be integrated in the National Network Railway, we need to work closely with Network Rail, GVR, and other industry partners. So you can see here the East West Rail route connecting Oxford to Cambridge. Hopefully you knew about the project before. And the project is being delivered in 3 phases, or connection stages as we call it. Phase 1, linking Oxford to Bletchley and Milton Keynes. That's been constructed, currently undergoing its testing phase, and operations should begin later this year. The second phase, between Bletchley and Bedford, consists on upgrades to the existing Moston Bay line. We received £240 million to accelerate the works. This was announced on the last autumn budget statement, and the intention is to bring forward the services between Oxford and Bedford from 2030. Then the final stage, connecting Oxford to Cambridge together, needs to be done by applying for a design consent order, DCO, which will grant us the consent to build the new railway between Bedford and Cambridge, and any other upgrades that are needed between Bedford and Oxford to enable the full East West Rail service. So the strategic objectives for East West Rail are to improve, obviously, the East-West public transport connectivity, providing a railway link between the key urban areas in the Cambridge and Oxford arc, and also to improve interregional passenger connectivity by providing connection to north-south routes and also routes beyond Oxford and Cambridge. And this will stimulate economic growth. It will stimulate housing and employment across the region, and provide inclusive and sustainable growth, not only for the region, but for the UK as a whole as well. And in this slide, you can see the benefits that EWR hopes to achieve. We believe that by making it easier, faster, and more affordable to get around the region, the new railway will open up new journeys. It will cut travel times. It will ease congestion on the local roads, which is quite important. And beyond that, it will also bring more jobs for the people living locally. But this can only be achieved if EWR is able to provide a high-performing and reliable railway, one that can take people where they want to be and where they need to be on time and safely. And this is where the asset management and maintenance concept came in. So it serves as a strategic framework to guide our design decisions, ensuring that we have the best possible balance between scope choices and design decisions, ensuring that we maximize the value across the whole of the asset lifecycle. The concept was created alongside the EWR vision and aims to demonstrate the benefits of applying asset management principles and thinking about the operational phase from an early phase of a major project. We believe that by scoping and testing the asset management and maintenance requirements at this early stage, we are more confident on selecting and designing the most suitable assets for EWR, delivering not only best value for taxpayers, but also designing a railway that is best for the future users. The approach is based on modern asset management, which is centered around data. So this data will drive decision-making and will enable changing from a reactive to a more predictive maintenance approach. When successfully implemented, this kind of approach has proven to drive high-quality benefits, such as the reduction of costs, improvement on performance and safety, and also greater passenger satisfaction. Usually, high-quality products come associated with higher costs, but in reality, in railways, a high-performing railway is actually cheaper than a poor-performing one. And what we know is that this design phase, the creation phase that we're at, is where we have the best opportunity to shape all the remaining asset life cycles. So the initial elements that we're considering is how can we design a railway that is made to last and is inherently safe? The intention here is to understand the required functional outcomes in order to achieve that ultimate all-life value, but at the same time meeting the performance, reliability, availability, and maintainability requirements. And one of the principles that we are applying to achieve this is reducing the complexity of the systems and the number of assets that you need to maintain and apply standardization. So this will allow us to simplify maintenance, reduce downtime, and also increase the productivity of the maintenance teams. Another fundamental element, and you heard about it today, is centered around digitization. So it's necessary to embrace the advantages and opportunities that a digital railway brings and ensure that data can be seamlessly captured and exchanged in order to reap the benefits of data analytics. And when we complement this with design asset monitoring solutions, this will allow the future infrastructure manager to understand and to capture the data that allows them to understand the condition, deterioration, and performance of their critical assets and systems. And this is the knowledge that will enable that predictive maintenance approach that I've mentioned, and will effectively allow them to do the right intervention at the right time. And by doing so, we'll be contributing to those features of the vision, a high-performing, reliable, and safe railway. And EWR is really a great opportunity to accelerate that digital railway vision. And I think it's less revolutionary than what it may sound. So you heard some great examples today. I'm sure you'll hear more, and you know of other cases that are being already applied in industry. They're probably not being done too consistently and maybe not really driving the benefits or the efficiencies that they could have. And so I think we have an advantage because we just need to use that best practice as our baseline, and we can do that from day one of operations, sort of removing one of the main barriers, which is the change management process. Besides that, EWR, because of its size and because of it's going to be a fairly standard railway, it's probably perfect for trialing new ideas and be a testbed for innovation. We can deploy proof of concepts, validate them, and demonstrate the business case, which can then be quickly scaled up across the rest of the route, the region, or the country for that matter. But to do so, we also need to be able to challenge existing processes and practices and current standards in order to drive that efficiency and productivity. And to do that, we're working closely with Network Rail, anchoring the work that we're doing to Network Rail challenge statements, and working towards some of the elements around reducing boots on ballast, improving the safety of frontline teams, and even actually upskilling those frontline teams to get them ready to that future digital railway. But when you look at the industry at the moment, all of these initiatives that are already being done, as I said, are not necessarily driving efficiency. They're a bolt-on, you have legacy systems, they're not really well integrated, so that leads to frustration sometimes and to the lack of adoption. So one of the key aspects to make this successful, in our opinion, is having a cohesive and integrated digital backbone that connects systems, tools, and data and allows people to have easy access to the information they need to do their jobs, and also to improve decision-making processes. And this is what we're trying to achieve with our digital spine work, and Ivan is now going to tell you more about it.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah, great, I know it works. So you might wonder, why the hell am I doing in rail coming from a defence background? Well, the whole point of East West Rail was to try and attack a rail problem in a different perspective. And so 4.5 years ago, I was asked if I'd come in and head up the systems engineering team. Leap forward 4 years. We had a change in our executive team, and Ivan, I've got this concept called digital spine. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, I don't really know, but I want to leverage digital to drive this railway quicker, drive down the costs, put it ahead of time. I said, well, you do realise that if you talk about anything digital, put 100 people in a room, you'll have 200 different answers of what digital actually means and what digital spine might mean. And some of the terminology around digital you'll see above you. And if you touch anywhere in that digital world, you'll probably be familiar with all of those terms up there. And you may have the same ideas of what they mean as I do, or you may have different ones. So the first challenge with anything like this is to really drive down what it means for you and be very focused on what you're trying to achieve with digital methods, what are called digital twins, digital visualizations. Otherwise, it becomes a big sinkhole for money. And we found that out the hard way quite a lot in defense. So for us, again, trying to think a little bit differently, we start to look out, cast our eye out and say, right, well, who drives this well? Who does this? Who's really embraced this and tried to leverage it, and why? And we looked around and we looked into smart factories. We saw that as a useful mechanism to drive our thinking forward. Why? Huge disruptive influences certainly in the automotive sector. Led to significant change, challenging the way that cars, any motor vehicles built, and we've started to see some of those ideas permeate into rail in the EU, certainly with Deutsche Bahn, and some UK infrastructure work as well. So casting net around, I brought in Porsche Consulting. Porsche Consulting span out of their smart factory work about 20 years ago, and they've started to branch into infrastructure over the last sort of 10 or 15 years. And I said to them, look, I've seen what you're doing in smart factories. We were going down that way at AWE. We were going down that way in MBDA. Hostile state actors really changed the way you think about defence and the way that you build stuff and develop it. So what can we do to leverage that? So the first thing we said is, right, well, what's the project roadmap in trying to define what we mean by a digital spine? So first we said, right, well, we really need to understand what the framework is for this. What's the taxonomy? What is it we're trying to articulate? Where are we starting from? What are the guidelines? How do we visualize this? Then what are the processes along the railway development we really want to attack and really want to leverage, and really want to challenge how we do stuff? And then from that, what are those use cases that we need to articulate and create the narratives around them? And then really start to look at some analysis around benefit and value of the application of each of those use cases along our railway. How do we need to construct ourselves? How do we organise ourselves in order to achieve that? What was our implementation roadmap, and then what technical capabilities did we need to do that? And we completed this initial exercise just a few weeks ago. Incidentally, we kicked this work off just before Christmas, that second week of December. Had a 2-week break, obviously for the Christmas New Year shutdown. We had then another enforced 2-week pause due to spend review. And I think in that time, so just less about 3 months worth of working time, I think we held something like 50 or 60 different workshops, about 40, 50 people in each and every workshop that we had. So it was actually a very short timeline, but really, really focused effort, bringing a lot of expertise. I was an unpopular man for quite a while afterwards, I can tell you. So taxonomy, what does that mean? Well, you're seeing a lot of digital developments, a lot of bottom up. We deploy tools, we deploy things like iTwin. For those of you familiar with the Bentley model, we do all of that good stuff. But how do we then link it to what we're trying to do at the top? So we went back to basics and said, right, East West Rail's got a clear vision. There's a very clear vision. There's a very clear economic business case for this railway to exist. That's what we're here for. So how do we link with what we've already done at the bottom with the top, get that top-down, bottom-up view? And for us, again, leaning into the smart factory thinking, we adopted their model, their taxonomy for manufacturing as the template for this, and that vision, guidelines, target pictures, use cases, and then let's link that with some of the technology we're already thinking about, but then what is it we don't have? And then getting a framework. This truly was a systems approach. I'm a systems engineer. That's why I want to look at it. I want to look at a holistic approach to it. So how do we do that? How do we bring the digital along with the physical, and then look at it over the life cycle that we're going to develop the railway against? So this was the framework we came up with. It's a 3-axis framework. The left-hand side demonstrates the sort of at a very high level the kind of physical things that we're going to need to build along the railway or have as part of the railway. Along the bottom there, we've got the life cycle that we've adopted for East West Rail. The Network Rail folk in the room will see that's largely a PACE life cycle. That's what we've adopted. Why do something different when there's something that already exists that's really good? So we've brought it in and we've just slightly tailored it to suit our particular railway program. And that third axis that you see across the top there is the sort of digital maturity levels that we're looking to achieve, from basic visualizations through to being able to predict what's happening on the railway at any given time. And the key thing here is why is this really useful? Because any barking mad idea that you might come up with, or the workshops might come up with, needs to fit there somewhere. If it doesn't, it's not real. You know, it's foam jazz hands, and that's really useful. You get a lot of really exciting stuff in this space. There's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down. But if you're looking to deliver a railway in the sort of mid to late 2030s space, and it's now 2025, there's a degree of realism of what you can really do, you know, in the innovation space. So we then started to focus on you know, what's really important to us. We identified these 9 what we've called target pictures. They're pictures. We visualized the processes here that we wanted to really focus on. They are now our template for driving this forward. They're our guiding star for that. Everything we do is around those. We're at the stage now where we're identifying the senior owner within the business, who's going to own all of those, each one of those. Ownership at the top for driving what we're going to do in them going forward. In identifying these, we came up with, we identified almost 150 use cases across each of those. The numbers are actually up there on the board that you can see for them. Now, we clearly can't implement 150 use cases, and that's not feasible. So you've got to really start channeling down. So in that, we started then thinking, right, where do these lie in phases? So life cycle phases. There's some of these that are transversal. Don't forget the transversals. They're things that go right across the life cycle. They need to be in the picture for this. If it's truly integrated, you've got to think about program reporting. What are we doing this for in the first place? Better decision making, better interventions. You've got to bring the procurement and the commercial with you on this. It's really important. You know, we're a client organisation. Supply chain will be delivering this. We really need to identify what is it we need from the supply chain and work to communicate with them for them to understand what it is we're trying to achieve and what we see as their part in it. You'll note the numbering. I was asked this actually when I submit the slides. If you've got an error on your slides, is the numbering out of order? Well, it's deliberate. As Joao said, we start with the end in mind. That was our first thing. What's there when we want to go into use? And then we take back to the beginning, work forward again. Planning came a little bit later for us because we're kind of really almost at the end of that planning phase. We're going to StatCon in January. So there's not a great deal I can do in the planning phase, but there are things we can learn out the planning phase that will influence what we do next. And there may be gaps that we need to meet along that way. So if I pick on one of those target pictures and show you, I said to you, we visualize, this is how we visualize them. So this is a picture of that visualization. It sets out the process, starting at the top left-hand corner, going around and then moving back around to the right with some supporting processes along the right-hand side. And we did that for every one of those 9 target pictures. That identified, as we went through that, we came up with 15 focus use case areas. You can see where they fit along the timeline. I think you'll agree as well, some incredible graphics from the Porsche team here as well. Really being able to visualize that. You take that into your exec team, it really sort of lands very, very hard. You can take Porsche, bring Porsche into rail, but you can't take the 911 out. You see the little 911s there. They use those to pick out where, from their perspective, they felt that the ones that we could really might want to nail down on. We wanted to take one forward and rapidly develop it over the last 2 weeks of the project. And you'll see that C10 in there. Going into talking about use cases, this is the use case sheet that gets developed for each one of the use cases that we've brought forward. Again, I talked about sanity checks here and, realisms and maturity of technology, etc., what you can do within the time frame you've got. So we looked at all of these and we said, right, well, this one we think is about standard for other industries. We're not sure it's standard for infrastructure, but it isn't a complete pioneer. Right, so it's got legs. We can work with it. You can see where we've positioned it in the bottom middle on our against our taxonomy, our 3 axes, so we know it's real, we can deliver it. We've also done some categorization of what we think and where it has impact on our corporate KPIs. Again, got to link it back to what your end state is. Why are we building East West Rail? We then sort of start saying for each of those 19 use cases, how do we start thinking about the benefit and value and quantify that, and then really drive down and say, right, actually, what can we realize, truly realize, and then lead to the definition of what we call this digital spine. I'm not going to put the numbers in there clearly today, and the reason I'm not is because, you know, our AFC will change. Most of you would have seen the announcement yesterday from the government on Universal going into Bedford. That does change our design. That will change our AFC. So I'm not going to share numbers. But, you know, we run the algorithm. We came up with a set of value numbers, what we could target, and I don't think it'll come to many as a surprise that the highest overall benefit value we could gain would be looking at targeting time and cost avoidance is actually in construction. You can see the indicative numbers up there. They kind of look low at first glance, but they're big numbers when it comes to money. But we need 5 things to really hold true in order to deliver on that. The requirements and specifications have got to be defined for each use case prior to engaging with the marketplace. Clear idea what we want from it before the marketplace. Clear design use cases, they're implemented. We've got some design ones we need to implement now. That gives me a bit of a panic attack, I can tell you. We're a little bit behind the curve on some of that. There are interdependencies between all these use cases. You have to not just have a digital process, you've got to improve the way you actually deliver that digital thing on the ground. So on the ground has to change too. Just implementing digital measures are not good enough. And it needs to be aligned with commercial options and get the marketplace with you. So what happens when you get there? You get to this. So we've been able to define it. This is our target. This is the outcome. This is what we're trying to drive forward, and we want to see from our digital strategy. And with that, I think you'll find that we've gone from having this very, very woolly idea about what digital is to being very, very focused on what it means for the East West Railway. Thank you very much.